But at that same time, Christian Lorette was working on Run from the Cure. And luckily, about 2 weeks before I was sentenced, it was late January, we got Run from the Cure out there, and then we got it up on the Internet. So that made them even more uncomfortable. But every one of these, the judge, the two prosecutors, all of them, they all knew what I was saying was true. But yet they would not do a thing. They just wanted to maintain the status quo. So that's the kind of situation I was in. And on the day of the sentencing, I got a lawyer from Halifax to come up, and he had looked into this case. And at first he was trying to say, that I was like more or less like a conspiracy theorist, which is nonsense. And then he told me, he said, well, people won't take you seriously because you're not highly educated, you're not a doctor. And when he said that, I come right out of the chair and I told him, I said, did Henry Ford have a Ph.D. when he invented the car? Or did the Wright brothers have a Ph.D. when they taught us how to fly? And I also told him, I said, I'd appreciate it if you never say another word like that to me. When just before I was sentenced, he took me into a side room, and this is exactly what he said to me. He said, the government knows about this, and he said, but they want the researchers to bring it out. And I looked at him and I said, I said, this is ridiculous. I said, we've been waiting over 100 years for the researchers to bring this out, and what have they done? And I looked at this lawyer and I said, and his name was Duncan. I said, Duncan, if one of your loved ones had cancer, I said, what would you be looking for? And he just dropped his head. And matter of fact, all through the court case, I was a very hard person to handle in court because I told the judge off and everything else. I told him that before this was over, he's the one that's going to be going to jail. And I remember once he said to me, Mr. Simpson, you can't take this personally. And I looked at him and I said, again, I come out of the chair and I said, look, I said, take this personally. I said, because of those raids that the RCMP conducted, people have died. Do I take that personally? You're damn right I do. And down goes the judge's head. He couldn't look me in the face. So at the sentencing, he got up and he said that in his 34 years in the legal system, he had never seen a case like this. He said there was no criminal intent. He admitted that the scientific evidence was there to back up everything I was saying. And he also stated that all of these, people I had treated were backing my position too. So what they did, they gave me a $2,000 fine and a gun restriction. And why I was given a gun restriction, I have no idea, because there was no firearms in my house during any of the RCMP raids. So, by the time this case was over, I was totally disgusted with Canada. But the people kept coming. They kept coming and wanting help. So I just kept helping, whoever I could. And actually, I treated cops, and their family members. And, I had a great deal of support from, or I shouldn't say a great deal, but I did have a fair bit of support from many, many people. But it just kept going on like that until 2009. And then I was contacted by the Canopticum, a magazine in the Czech Republic, and Baron Ramsey Cosmetics. They sponsored me to come over and do a tour in the Czech Republic. And Dr. Lemire Hanush, he's one of the greatest experts in this field on the planet, him and we did the tour together. And so we spoke, in 5 different functions, and then I spoke at another 5 or 6 myself. But, Dr. Hanush and I were speaking at the medical school in Olomouc in the Czech Republic. And Dr. Hanush spoke, and then I spoke. And when I was done, this young medical student, she walked up to me and she said, well, you're calling doctors murderers. And I looked at her and I said, well, if I give somebody poison and they die from its effects, what would you call me? And then I told her, I said, does it make any difference if you're wearing a white coat? And she really got mad then. And she said, the faculty of this university wants you back here on the 26th of October, and they're going to set you straight. And I looked at her and I said, listen, little girl, I said, you get every doctor in the Czech Republic. Get them all here on the 26th, and we'll see who gets set straight. And so the people that were sponsoring the tour, they got quite excited because they thought that, the university was going to take me on. And I told them, I said, it's not going to happen. I said, I'm the only one telling the truth. They got nothing to take me on with. 3 days later, the medical school called up and canceled. So that's the kind of thing you're up against. The thing is with this medicine, see, we can all grow the plants ourselves, And it's so simple that basically anyone can produce their own medicine. And this is exactly what they don't want. So after I was done with the tour, I went back to Canada for 3 weeks. And then I came back to Amsterdam to the Cannabis Cup because they made me Freedom Fighter of the Year. And so when I was at the Cup, about 6 days after I left Canada and was in Amsterdam, the RCMP staged another raid on my property. And of course that was done so they were trying to do a frame job is what they were doing. But I was contacted by my son and he told me what had happened. And then when I called the RCMP and they wouldn't give me a straight answer. They just said, we want to talk to you. And I knew what that meant because I seen the corruption myself all through the system. So I decided then that I would stay in Europe and write the book about this subject, which I'm just finishing now, and and wait for public opinion, wait for the public to become aware of what's going on here. Because the simple truth is, every man, woman, and child on this planet should be taking small doses of that oil every day to maintain good health. And if we did that, we'd all be living much longer and much more healthy lives. So I'm still fighting the battle over here, and then last April, Jack Herer, great man, Jack was the leader of the hemp movement for years, and Jack's dying wish was that the hemp movement, or the leadership of the movement, be passed to me. So last April, I was made leader of the hemp movement. So I've been speaking whenever I could over here in Europe and doing interviews and everything, and to keep pushing this forward. And we're going to win. There's no question. We're gaining thousands of followers every day, and they're losing people or followers. So the system has nowhere to run. With this medicine, it's so easy because I tell people when I do these radio shows and internet shows, I say, look, don't believe a word I'm saying. Simply go out, buy 1 ounce of good hemp bud, produce the oil, find somebody with a skin cancer, a diabetic ulcer, a 3rd-degree burn, anything like that, apply the oil, prove it to yourself. This is medicine for the masses. And when this medicine comes out, it's going to be the end of the drug companies, and a great number of doctors are going to be out of work. Codex Alimentarius, the outlawing of the natural, yes, that's going on worldwide, and that should be stopped. As a matter of fact, anybody that would even introduce such a thing, as far as I'm concerned, they're a traitor against their own people. That's causing the death of people. And this is what I've been saying, about Canada. What they're doing, they're committing genocide against their own people. And the same thing is going on in the U.S., and most countries in the world are doing the same. So, to turn your back on a God-given plant that is totally harmless, and I've researched this subject, and many other people have too, for a good number of years now, and we have never found anything about that plant that is not beneficial. So why is it denied?